And do correct me if I'm wrong, I've seen that in your real estate, you have attached a really good cause by providing some sort of bi-monthly rent for single moms.
That's
Would you
right.
like to talk a bit about that? Because I've heard a number of investing gurus talking about making large amounts of money through real estate, and I've never come across something so unique and purposeful that you are doing.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for being so detail oriented and actually asking the right questions. Yeah, there's so many interviewers we can learn from you, honestly. Um, so that specific line, it's something that I like people to see because I think that more people should be doing it. And I grew up with a single parent, mainly with my mother. That's where I lived, and she had zero help and zero outreach. And I think that the easiest ways to help, I think that preventative care is so much better than nonprofit care. So for example, when we work with foster kids, it would be so much better if they weren't foster kids in the first place and the families were well equipped, right? So in the same way, when I encounter a single parent that doesn't have perfect credit, there's a certain talent of perception that I think that a lot of people are gifted with and not many people put to use. And so if I perceive, and I've perceived this pretty well because I've never missed a month of rent from a tenant, that a person their credit isn't great, but they're a good person and they're sincere and they're just living paycheck to paycheck, I usually try to analyze their paychecks and see, get them to qualify for an apartment they typically wouldn't qualify for by splitting up their payments further. So it seems almost impractical. It seems almost like for someone who's in the real estate business, they would think that it's impractical and I'm stretching myself too much for someone. And for someone out of real estate, they would say, oh, it's the same difference. They're still paying the same amount. But no, people are paid sometimes every 2 weeks on a Friday. And their credit is poor because they budget according to that. And they're not good at saving money for the first of the month. And so they get bad credit and they can't afford a good apartment in a good town. And so they end up these single parents end up going into bad neighborhoods where their kids are raised around bad influences, and it's a vicious cycle. And so I keep basically with strategic planning on how we effectively pay rent, I keep single parents, primarily in a really good area. By really good, I mean like extraordinarily good. Oak Park it's where Ernest Hemingway was raised, and Frank Lloyd Wright buildings. The architecture is beautiful. And so I keep these families in these neighborhoods by, when they're looking for some sort of alternative, I provide them an alternative within the same county rather than them having to find an alternative living situation elsewhere. Let's say I have a tenant, her name is Ashley, I'm just making up a name, and she applies to stay at an apartment that costs $1,290 a month. It's a third floor apartment, and typical qualifying credit score is 650 or higher. The best credit is 850. 650 is still actually, it's not ideal. It may be that they're leasing a car, or they missed a payment, or their kids have student loans. But then there's a notch below that, which is between 500 and 650, sometimes even lower. And these are people who miss payments regularly, and they oftentimes go into overdraft on their credit card. So these people typically, just because of the system that we have in place, get pushed into poorer communities. So I typically give them the option when they're applying, and they say, hey, I don't know if you'll even accept me. I'm, say at 300 on a credit score, and it's because I miss payments all the time. Because I'm paid on every 2 weeks on a Friday, and I sometimes don't have all the money on the first. So I'll work with them and say, okay, pay me $625 every 2 weeks on a Friday. And, if you miss a payment, I won't, kick you out. We'll get it the following month or the following 2 weeks from then on a Friday. I work with them, I communicate with them, I problem solve with them, I help them budget. And they usually end up much more financially sound because I serve as a landlord, but also almost like a financial advisor in helping them out. And I also, with my knowledge of nonprofits, sometimes get them to the right programs to help them with rent and help them with their needs rather than just kicking them out like a typical landlord will. Because I think that most people just don't know what resources exist, and that's the root of their issues. They don't have time to look for resources.
And believe me, he's so used to that routine that even right now, I'm afraid that you'll pull out a Shakespeare script in the middle of this podcast and I would have no idea how to follow through.
I gotcha.
Well said.